Okay, we are live, guys. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome to my first co-hosting live stream with Tanisha from Tanisha Talks. Welcome, welcome. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm good. Listen, guys, she came in looking fresh. She came prepared. She came
I'm
prepared. Let's
always
not play any games.
stay ready.
So we've got some great topics that we're gonna talk about today. We want to talk about Will and Jada, dating the black community, and the dating in general between men and women, what it's like today. So since you're the guest, what would you like to start with first? I'll give you the floor.
Ooh, okay. So I think that to start off with talking about Will and Jada, we have to talk about their double standard in their marriage when it
Mm,
comes to them having an open marriage. Because I see a lot of people accusing her of being a cheater and they talk about her affairs. And I'm just
yeah.
trying to understand why she is getting the blame for these things when Will has had his relationships on the side as well.
Well, that's a good question. So do we know any relationships that he's had on the side?
Yeah. So I have to look up the girl's name, but there was a younger woman. I don't know how many years back this was, but they were taking vacations and taking pictures and stuff together. So he definitely had a thing. There's been some other rumored things that I don't think I'll get into, but there's
Okay.
been a lot with his sexuality and who he's dealt with and things like that. So it's been a lot of talk about that for a while.
Yeah, I agree. I've definitely heard rumors. I think
Hmm.
there's clearly a difference here because if it was just an open marriage, they wouldn't have had a whole red table talk to do with, as he put it, her transgressions.
Okay.
So clearly there was a breach of understanding somewhere, and I think where a lot of um, not hate but backlash that they may get from that is, and you can tell me what you think, but I think a lot of men and a lot of women, they love Will, but I don't think they respect him.
Mm. I would say yes. In recent times, the respect level has definitely gone down for sure.
But I think they don't respect him as a man within his relationship.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
And this is something Jordan Peterson says, that quote unquote weak men, or men who we would perceive as weak, they're not like they're not liked by men or by women, but even especially by women a lot of the time.
Um,
What do you think?
I don't know. I feel like honestly in this situation, just because the way that it has been shaped where he was defending a black woman, a lot
Mm.
of women are the ones who are standing up for Will in this situation, but I feel a lot of the backlash is coming from men.
I agree. I agree to do with specifically with Chris Rock. I do
Mhm.
think a lot of women are defending him. What's your take on it?
In terms of him slapping him, you're saying? I don't
Yeah,
think
what's your take?
that. Oh God. Okay, so first and foremost, I just want to say I love Will Smith. I'm not canceling him, but I'm gonna try to be unbiased.
Disclaimer. She put the disclaimer in.
No, disclaimer. He definitely shouldn't have slapped him. I think there's a time and a place for everything, and I don't think that that situation warranted violence. I think he
Mm,
could have even if he cursed him out from his seat or went up there on the stage and said something to make a joke on him, anything would have been better than the slap that he did. I don't think that it would have been such a big deal. But they say hindsight is 2020 as well. We don't know how we would act in that situation. Um, I think that what's a great area is the fact that Chris Rock seems to repeatedly pick on Jada. He did it last year or the previous year that he hosted, and then
yeah.
now it happened again. So if the people behind the Oscars are writing his jokes for him, then the question should be, well, what is this fixation that you have with Jada? Why is she also the brunt of your jokes on this whole new year of Oscars? Like, it's just weird energy to me. And I know a lot of people feel like she was getting backlash because she was saying she wanted to boycott the Oscars. So I just think there's more to it, which might be why he got frustrated.
Okay, I hear that. So there are a couple of points I want to go through there, and
Oh,
I
okay.
understand one thing. So I completely agree that it's not that he shouldn't have done anything, but obviously that wasn't warranted.
Yeah, that was
Do you think Chris Rock picks on Jada and the Smith family in particular? Because the host of the Oscars is literally to roast the guests. And I don't know if you watched the whole thing, but like that was the only two jokes that I found that he actually made on Jada specifically.
mm-hmm.
in that set. So do you think that he does actually, pick on Jada specifically? Like there's some kind of beef between him and the Will Smith family, or do you
I
think it was
don't
just
know. I don't think that there's a beef, but I think that he definitely got influenced by people who might have some sort of an issue with her. But
mm,
there, you could have said anything. Like there were a lot of black people in that room. He could have made a joke about a whole bunch of black people being there. I think people would have laughed. Like there were just other avenues that he could have taken where it didn't
mm.
seem like she was being attacked, since he previously took shots at her career and now he's talking about how she looks. I don't know. I don't think that was right.
Do you think it's to do with him picking on her as a black woman, or just because she's a superstar and she's a celebrity, and Jada and Will are some of the biggest stars in Hollywood? So almost if you kind of made little jokes about anybody not on that level, it would be seen as kind of punching down. Do you know what I mean?
But there's a lot of other people in Hollywood that he could have said anything about. Why does it specifically have to be them again? Well, her specifically again.
Well, he
And
named some other people, I
friend of
think.
yours. I mean, you know what? Another thing is, I think that if he had put Will to the side, because my understanding is that they have a relationship with each other outside of all of this, he could have just gave them a heads up, like, look, this is the joke that's happening. Like, maybe that would have smoothed it over a little bit more, so he wasn't as blindsided by it. But there were different ways to handle that. So I
See,
think he has some responsibility too that people aren't really highlighting as much.
I'll be honest, I'm going to disagree. I don't think he should pull anyone aside, because
Okay.
that's the whole that's whole part of the genuine reaction, because the Oscars are meant to be live. So he
Mhm.
can't pull aside every celebrity being like, hey, just so you know, this joke is going to be in there, like be
Okay.
prepared for it. Maybe he could, I'm not saying that he couldn't have, but then he'd be giving them special treatment over other people, don't you think?
Yeah, but also I don't think that he's attacked other people as much as he did Jada. So it's like, I mean, if he had done this to other people where it's a repeated joke that's going on, then maybe I would understand that. Like, okay, you're repeatedly talking about other people, you didn't give them a heads up. But is he repeatedly talking about other people the way that he has done with Jada?
Interesting. That's a fair point. I mean, I don't know how much he's actually made, jabs or jokes at Jada specifically in the past. But then obviously, the comparison that I've made in my video and other people make is Ricky Gervais when he hosts the Golden Globes. He rips into a lot of celebrities. He's ripped into Mel Gibson several times. Yet
Mm-hmm.
nobody it was never warranted for someone to kind of act in that behavior, or to respond in that way. So it's kind of like, well, I kind of get what you're saying, but then Ricky Gervais has done that 4 or 5 years in a row, and there was nowhere near this kind of outrage.
I feel like it's also, for one, I think black women are standing up because it's a black woman. So I think that a lot of the shots were taken to heart. But I think that he got so bothered by it as well because they have been a joke, honestly, in the media for the past 2 years. So this isn't something that just happened yesterday. All of a sudden, he's upset. People have repeatedly joked about their marriage, how they raised their kids, just constantly took jabs at him. So I think in that moment where this is a big night for him, he's like, again, like, you guys are going to make a mockery of me. I'm here. I'm nominated for an Oscar. So I'm not saying that he's right. Again, I want to clarify. I don't think that he handled the situation correctly, but I can understand where the level of frustration came from.
I hear that. So let's talk about their marriage.
Okay.
So you
Yeah,
said
let's
that
talk about your marriage. Yes.
you said that it's kind of been it's been a bit of a joke in Hollywood eyes,
Mhm.
several years.
Yes.
Why do you think it has been?
So going back to what you said about the whole why they did the red table talk, the reason
Mm,
why they had to do that, I honestly don't think that Will Smith cared about August Alsina, to be completely honest. I think
mm,
the issue is that August Alsina talked about it. Everything that they had previously done was pretty discreet. Nobody really knew the specifics. And then this man came forward. He went into detail about their relationship. And so he had
mm.
to clarify it because as Will Smith before this, he was pretty unproblematic. His record was pretty unblemished. So I think that is the true reason why they went and had the red table talk discussion.
Okay, I hear that. I'm going to be honest. I think the reason their marriage is seen is interpret. It can how you interpret it is up to you. But the reason their
Mm-hmm.
marriage has different interpretations about whether it's serious, whether it's a joke, is because they put that stuff out there themselves. And I get it.
Mhm.
They're coming from a place of, oh, this is a modern marriage and this is what we're trying to do and be open and we will show people the progress of my marriage. And that's completely fine. And there's some merit in that. But then that does open you up for criticism. And you have to be able to take that if you're going to open yourself up like that. Let's talk about the Oscars. And, you said you watched my video. And I think one of the points that you kind of raised that we should talk about is Black people having a higher standard for each other.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
I feel like this whole situation definitely has, I won't even say little traces, a lot of things to do with white privilege.
Okay.
Because as Black people, everyone's saying, oh my God, he made Black people look bad and this set us back and so on and so forth. But we are the only ones who have to worry about that type of critique. If it was a white person who acted out the way that he did, people would be outraged. Granted, he went on TV and he slapped somebody. But at the end of the day, they wouldn't be like, oh, he made all white people look bad. This is just something that we constantly have to deal with. And so it's on one end, I can understand people who are racist, prejudiced, and they have those viewpoints. But I think it's a problem when we begin to internalize this ourselves and we start to repeat those same comments. So I don't like that. I have a big issue with that.
Okay. Here's why I think as Black people we do have to hold ourselves to a different standard.
Okay.
Precise. And it's not to do with the racist, like, oh, if we do something and someone judges us as a group of people, yeah, that's their own issue. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
The world's not fair.
This is true.
It's never going to be an equal playing field no matter who you are. That's the same with gender, same with race, same with sexuality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's an element of when you want to get ahead, you have to play the game.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. Let's be honest. Look, you're an attractive girl, right? I'm sure you, quote unquote, get into clubs for free when you bat your eyelashes and you spruce up looking good, right? You're playing the game to get ahead.
Yeah.
And you're not, people aren't going to be like, oh, well, just because guys don't get it for free, I'm not going to not use what I've got to advance in that sense. Do you know what I mean? Now, the thing is, in the West, listen, because the way it's been built and everything, it is the white majority, right? They have consistently had a dominance in this space. Right. So I think as Black people, the best way to move forward, because I think we have the same goals, right? We want to get to a point where we can get it as equal as possible. There's not judgments made on our entire race based on one person. I think we want to get to that point. I think how we want to get there is what is debatable, because I think if we play the game to the point we put ourselves on top or put ourselves in positions where we can make the difference. So like, is it Jordan Peele who, did a Get Out film, right? He's like, I'm only going to tell Black stories. That's a way he played the game to put himself in that position to now he's making the difference. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. Actually, I do agree with that. I do.
So I think what it is, it's kind of like, for me, it's kind of like, I'm going to hold my it's like, imagine you have kids, right? I'm going to hold my kids to a higher standard than their white friends, because I know what the world is for them and I want them to do well. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, I don't care if, your other friends are loitering on the corner and it's looking suspicious. You're not going to do that.
I do. Yeah, I don't think that we should be stooping to a lower level. Absolutely not. But I guess the question is, do you think that we can realistically ever get to that point where it is completely equal? Because my perspective is that if there are people out there who ultimately have this fixed mindset that Black people are subpar, whatever, can't control emotions, very angry, aggressive, I think they're always going to have that mindset. He was well-mannered for 20 years. And the moment he messed up, it just kind of, okay, here, this is what we were talking about. So I just feel like it's a situation where they're always going to be waiting for something to happen. So will it ever genuinely be equal with that in mind?
So I agree. People who have that mindset, I don't think they're going to change. But I think what we have to do is be able to represent Black people in different lights, and that's going to make us more of a blank canvas. So one thing I say is that in the Black community in the Western society, I'm on the biggest levels of hip hop, and R&B, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's a part of me that's frustrated because they are the only black individuals who are our role models. We don't. Where's the entrepreneurs? Where's the
Mm-hmm.
business owners? Where's the the family man? We need to have different levels of role models, so we're seen as three-dimensional people, not one-dimensional. And I
Okay.
think, and I think, and I agree. It's a shame because Will clean slate, and then one little thing, and everyone's like, "Bam!" Look,
Just destroy all his progress. I hate
I, don't-
that.
I hate that. And look,
Yeah.
I love Will more than the next person. Like I really do. Do you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And I even said in my video, I don't not have love for him for that. I think somebody in his position, here's what it is, because he is a black individual in his position, he's gonna have more influence than his white counterpart. And so there's fortunately or unfortunately so it's a double-edged sword. There's more of a responsibility on his shoulders and
Mm-hmm.
people or black people in those positions. However, what I would say is that the saving grace was Chris Rock because he didn't rise to that. He
Right.
maintained his composure, he maintained his professionalism. So it's funny because he did justice, in my opinion, the look for quote unquote black individuals. He
Mm-hmm.
did justice for that. Here's the thing for me, it's not even sorry, yeah, what do you think on what I just said, and then I'll move on.
Like I said, I do agree, but I guess the question is, and this has come up a lot,
Mm,
should we be looking at celebrities as role models? And I think that you touched on it with saying that we should be three-dimensional because there are a lot of people out there who are positive role models. So whose fault is it that we're putting these celebrities in such a high regard? Because there are a lot of celebrities who will tell you, Rihanna, for example, I'm not a role model. You can like me all you want, but do not look to me to be a role model because I'm not.
mm.
So, how do we change that way of thinking so that we are recognizing other Black people more than celebrities?
I think we have to, which is kind of starting to do now, is that um, we have to celebrate other areas of achievements in our culture.
Hmm.
And I would say in the Black Western culture, we celebrate each other's music, fantastic. We celebrate each other's dance, that's fantastic. Um, but I don't often hear, like I said, celebrating the black businessman over here, the entrepreneur over here. It started to happen more with social
Hmm.
media, which is great. I think that the only difference is I think the social media stars hasn't become that mainstream yet. So you can be famous on social media, but you may
Hmm.
walk down the street and people may not know you because I think it's a generational thing. Um, so I think we do need to, but also as well, if I'm being honest, we have to get to a point where we can idolize someone as a role model, but then not entirely agree with how they handle everything they do. I think a lot
Yeah.
of the time in the hip hop culture, we
Hmm.
have a role model, which means everything they do, we're on board with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have to be able to say, you know what, I love this person and stuff, but I'm not down for that. And we do have to hold each other accountable.
Yeah. So, do you think that is it possible, and do you think it's good for us to appreciate the art that someone gives and separates their personal life from the gift that they have, or do you think that it should be lumped into one?
I think it's possible.
Hmm.
Not my personal opinion, but I mean, the classic case is Chris Brown. Like
Oh
what
yeah. Yeah.
happened, what happened with him and Rihanna, but he's still popping, man, because
Mhm.
whether you like him or not, he's one of the most incredible, talented artists on the planet.
Exactly.
So people do separate. So I do find I do find it. This doesn't excuse it, but you know, like the whole the baby made that homophobic comment.
Yep.
Do you remember that?
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's funny because and this further shows, I think, um, the disrespect sometimes black people can have for each other. Is we knew people like the baby. He's killed people. He's
Mm.
like killed black people, and no one says anything. But then he
Mhm.
makes one homophobic comment, which affects a different group of people. Then
Mhm.
everybody's up in arms.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying neither is okay, but why do we tolerate and accept the killing of other black people in our culture? But then, because like I said, in my opinion, I think a big reason why, there was backlash to do with the homophobic slur is because it affects white people, it affects Asian people, it affects other group of people. If it just affected the black individual, I don't think anyone would have said anything.
Yeah, I like to call it selective outrage. I think that's what we're seeing right now. But I also think what you said is absolutely correct. But I think a piece to it is that we realize we're supposed to act a certain kind of way in white spaces. And I think people are really upset at the fact that it happened in that setting. I don't know if it was a situation where it was, let's say, the BET Awards. If he went on stage and slapped Chris Rock, would it have that same type of effect? Because people don't see it in the same honor or regard, because it's ultimately something that's based for Black people. But I think he stepped outside of his place. He didn't behave the way he was supposed to behave in a white space. And I think that plays a factor as well.
So do you think if let's say it was the BET Awards and he'd done it then, do you think it would have been, do you think that's more acceptable because it's in a Black space?
Not from my perspective. I don't think it would be more acceptable, but I think it definitely would have been viewed differently. Absolutely.
I'll be honest. I think if it was done at the BET Awards, the outrage should have been the same.
You think so?
I think it should be.
I don't agree with that. I don't think so.
I'm not saying it would be.
Yeah.
But I think it should be.
It should. Yes, I agree. It should be the same.
It should be. It should be. We have to hold our stands better for us. One of the things I said about Will and Jada's relationship is that she is the leader in the relationship. What do you think?
Oh, and after reviewing a few things and then learning a little bit more about what he talked about in his book, I do think that, it's tough. I don't know if she leads per se, but I do think that they trauma bonded with one another. Like that was kind of the basis of them falling in love with each other. And I think that he just goes out of his way to try to please her. Now, does that mean that she's the leader? I'm not sure. It could mean that maybe he has some sort of maternal issues. I think that he said previously that he wished he had stuck up for his mom more in previous situations. So I think that can be transferring over into their relationship. But I don't know. I think the issue for me is that people are painting Jada out to be the villain in this situation. And I'm just trying to understand why. Like people are saying she's a narcissist. She brainwashed him. She's the reason why he went up there. And it's just like, I think he's capable of thinking for himself. I think he definitely keeps her in mind with a lot of things, but I don't know if I would say she's the leader in the relationship.
You see, I think the fact that people are pointing fingers at her is a reflection that she is the leader. And I'll tell you why. Because when a team and something does horribly bad, everybody looks at the captain. Everyone looks at the captain.
Okay. I think that people blame her because she's a Black woman.
Really?
I think that if the roles were reversed and Will was the one who was acting out in this marriage and they were known to have an open marriage, I don't think that the critiques would have been the same against him the way that it is with Jada.
Do you think is it only men critiquing her, or do you think women are critiquing her as well?
I've definitely seen women critiquing her as well. So it's not only men. I definitely won't say that. But I also think that there are a lot of women who have adopted viewpoints that might stem from forms of misogyny, patriarchy, and things like that. So yes, there are some women who agree with what men are saying, but I just don't think that the outrage would have been the same if it was Will who was doing all of this.
So if it's some Black women critiquing her, do you think, why do you think Black women are critiquing her? Even though she's a Black woman, do you not? Why that kind of contradicts, doesn't it?
Not really, because I think that there are a lot of women who critique other women, again, because they've adopted viewpoints from misogyny or patriarchy. So we judge other women all the time based on standards of what men have usually set forward, how women dress, how they present themselves in different situations. And so it doesn't mean that those traces of misogyny, patriarchy aren't there. It's just that women have adopted those viewpoints based on what they hear from society.
Okay, so I want to ask you a question. Okay. What's the difference between critiquing because of inbred patriarchy and misogyny and holding other women accountable?
So my question is, in this situation specifically, what would be holding her accountable? Hold her accountable for what exactly?
Well, here's the thing. I would say
Mhm.
that because she's seen as the leader and the captain in the relationship,
Mhm.
and ultimately, especially when you're out as a couple. What's up, Marvs? Hi, thanks for joining us. Um, Especially if you're out as a couple, you do represent the relationship. But I think because she's the leader, um, she is seen as the. I think people feel sorry for Will Smith because people
Mhm.
know he's not a bad guy
Yeah.
because he has such a clean slate. But people
Mhm.
also know that Jada isn't squeaky clean. So what I
Right.
think's happening is people are looking at Will being like, this is so out of character for him. He must be so under her spell for him to actually like he went up and slapped a man at the Oscars. Like
Mhm.
that is so out of character for him. People are
Mhm.
like, this can't be because it's just him. There's something else there of their relationship. Now, I said in my video, if you're a man who is loved and respected, right?
Mhm.
You're loved, but you're not respected. That's on you because you didn't set your standards, you didn't set your boundaries. And in my opinion, look, I love the Smith family, but as a man, for him to have respect, he should have dropped Jada years ago. I mean, this woman.
Really?
Oh,
Okay.
oh I mean, like, I mean, like, from the moment then, and it's difficult, it's different because they're in a marriage and they have kids, so there's more incentive to stay. And I do commend them for working it out. But he didn't
Mhm.
set his standards or his boundaries. Like that red table talk that they had, he kind of was like he was heartbroken. And people saw that. And the thing is, I think what it is, I think the main thing as well, this comes from that is she called it an entanglement. She didn't go, yeah, I messed up. She wasn't like, I broke this man's heart. It was kind of the whole interview was her justifying it to him. And
You think?
objectively,
Okay.
I never heard her say sorry. Did you hear her say sorry?
Um, I don't recall her saying sorry. But I think this kind of goes back to what is it that she's apologizing for? Because if they have an open marriage, ideally they can talk to whoever they want. So I think the problem was not what she did. I think that it was that it came to light. So if she's apologizing on behalf of August, bringing it to the public, sure, I can understand that. But I'm not too sure what, in that situation, what she should be apologizing for if they have an open marriage.
Well, the whole open marriage thing, we
Mm-hmm.
don't know the terms and conditions,
This is true.
right?
Yeah.
So if what she did was okay,
Mhm.
one, he wouldn't have been heartbroken. Two, they wouldn't have both called it a transgression. And it wouldn't have been this big thing. Because if they openly had an open marriage, people would have been like, okay, well, they have an open marriage, so she's gonna do that. Yeah, maybe who she did, her son's friend. That's a bit much, but
Mhm.
there's been worse in Hollywood. Do you know what I mean? I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio has only ever dated girls under the age of 25 for God knows how many years. So
Yeah.
there's worse. There's worse
Mhm.
things. People wouldn't bat an eye. But clearly, this she overstepped a boundary massively, and maybe they were open, maybe they weren't. So I think I was talking to Sarah Garvey, who's another big YouTuber, and one thing he was like that we've seen with Will over the years, we've seen such an emasculation and broken man, and all that frustration I think came out. Ironically, that slap I don't think had anything to do with Chris Rock.
Oh,
That's the
absolutely. I
irony.
agree. Yeah, I agree. I think that he made an example out of him. One, he was like kind of lashing out because he had built up frustration. But two,
Mm.
I think that that was kind of a symbol for anyone who has ridiculed him, his family, and anything that has to do with them as a unit. But,
Go
okay.
for it.
I think that we, as the society, mostly
Hmm.
Black people, should take some accountability for how we've ridiculed him to have him get to that point. Because I can definitely agree that, yes, Jada played a role in it. Obviously, that's their relationship. If she did something wrong that made him feel a kind of way, there were transgressions, yes, she has responsibility. But society doesn't really care about black men's well-being because we made a fool of him for the past 2 years. He was on all types of memes. And then if they cared about mental health, they wouldn't be making memes about Chris Rock. The next day, there were memes about him getting slapped. So it's like you still aren't taking it seriously. You don't see how making people a joke, regardless of them being celebrities and their business being out in the public. I think that we still have a responsibility to be decent human beings. Just because someone is more transparent about their life doesn't mean that I can be an a-hole and say whatever I want, because you should still have your own morals. And I feel like that's where we're lacking. And so it's easy to say, Jada, you did this, you did this. But we also contributed, because again, 2 years of people just constantly ridiculing you, I think that would make anybody want to lash out at a certain point.
And you know, and I completely agree with you. But in the words of Chris Rock, one of his stanza, the people with the most shit get to say the least shit. And the people with the least shit get to say the most shit.
Yeah.
So if you want to say more shit, get rid of some of your shit. and I think it's not fair, but I think that joke, what that highlights is, look, the more you have in life, and you know, because being at that level is not nothing.
Yeah.
Like, it's really something. If part of the gig, especially when you're so open to putting yourself out there, because there are people at that level who don't put themselves out there like that, but they choose to. So if you're at that level and you choose to put yourself out there, which, if we'll be honest, it's fantastic they do that, but there is a monetary gain. There is an incentive for them to be this way as well. I'm not saying it's not genuine, but there's an incentive to be like that. You have to be able to take the good with the bad. You have to be able to take criticism when you put yourself out there. Like, I'm sure, you know, you're a YouTuber, you know, you're growing, you're putting your opinions and thoughts online. I'm sure you've had a bit of backlash from some people as well, being like, I don't agree with what you're saying, blah, blah, blah. Right.
Yeah.
Now, you can have the same opinions, but you're openly putting it out there. Now, it's great because you're doing this other avenue. People start to get to know you. You get to have great discussions. But the open yourself up and putting yourself in the spotlight out there opens you up for criticism, and you have to be able to handle that. Do you not think?
Well, where is the cutoff point of what the criticism is, or what's the cutoff point when we start to say comedy versus bullying? Because I can say whatever I want about people. I can talk about the LGBTQIA plus community. I can talk about white people. I can say all types of offensive things. But now I'm a comedian. I get to say whatever I want because it's a joke. But if I wasn't a comedian, then most people would be genuinely offended by it. So what is the middle ground? Why is it something that comedians get a pass at just because they're a comedian?
I think they get a pass because they do it with everyone.
Okay.
They rip into everyone. Like, it's not just they stick on, on one person. I want to read out what Marv said here. He just said, as a man, he needs to take accountability for the dysfunction of his household. Both Jada and Will are responsible for this toxic relation. They're both responsible.
Absolutely.
They are. It's not just her, it is him. You know, like I said. I want to talk about you said about respecting each other as Black people in the public eye.
Yes.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think Black women respect Black men today more than they did in the past, or less?
It's a really good question. I think that I would say less, because women nowadays feel like they don't need men as much as women did in the past. I think feminism had a really big thing to do with that. And so because we are capable of having our own money, our own possessions, we don't have to sit in a corner and bite our tongue and just take whatever because we need the man. I think that has pros and cons. I mean, obviously it's good to be able to make your own way for yourself, but I do think that the level of respect and relationship dynamics is definitely off balance now more than it was in the past.
Okay. And why do you think, would you say that's the same for other races? Because obviously feminism incorporates for white women, Asian women. Do you think they respect their men less?
No, I don't think that they respect their men less. I think that they even might have more respect because they were raised to be family and marriage minded. So I think it definitely has to do with how we're being raised. But also other races aren't seeing their men be removed from households as much as Black people do, whether it be they're out in the streets being killed, mass incarceration. So when you have the men who aren't really present, and then you have these women who are stepping up to the forefront to adopt the role of the men who aren't there, then I think that leads to a shift in the power and then the respect that we have for men.
Massively. I agree with that. I do agree that, definitely in the I watched this documentary. It's from like the 60s to the 80s. There was almost an incentive of putting black men in incarceration, right? Incarcerating black men for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, However, I'd say that that was 30, 40, 50 years ago. Not saying that doesn't happen now,
Mm-hmm.
but I think we have a lot more choice in terms of the involvement of, black people and prioritizing the family. Yet we don't do that.
Yeah, I think that at this point, yes, it's going to take a lot of unlearning, but these are
Mm,
systems that have been set up for several decades. Because I think we can also say the same
true.
thing about racism, for example. People have the choice now. You're not ignorant like they were in the past. There's a lot of information out there. You can educate yourself, but
Mm,
people don't do it. It's a learned behavior. Some people don't want to put the effort in to do it because it's work. So I think that
mm,
we're also seeing that within our community as well. But I do think that's why we need to have important conversations like these just to
mm,
raise more awareness. I think that a lot of the manosphere channels, a lot of the femininity channels, they can be problematic because they're not speaking to the audience that they should be speaking to.
mm.
Where it's not really a collective conversation. It seems like it's segregating men and women more than anything, in my opinion.
I completely agree. There seems to be a very big divide between men and women today. And like you said, this is why we have these conversations. But that means we have to address the things that we don't want to address.
Yes, 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 yes.
um. So, do you? I have a question because talk about respect within the race, right?
Yeah.
Do you think black women have more respect for the white man than the black man?
Ooh, that's a good question again.
Yeah.
I would say yes. I
Okay.
think subconsciously, I would definitely say yeah. And I think it's because a lot of women are fixated on getting ahead, and we see white men, especially in professional spaces, they're the ones that have the power. So
Mm,
you kind of fall in line. It's kind of the way that you act at work versus the way that you act with your friends. You know that you can't say certain things around people who are in power, who can influence the money you have, your opportunities. And so I
mm.
think for sure, yes, there is more respect for white men.
Sure. So almost there's a level of more respect for white men because if there was disrespect, there's a level of consequence.
Exactly.
So do you think that's a common
I think I know
question?
where you're going with this one. Okay, go ahead.
So do you think black men need to have more of a consequence? And I don't mean physical, obviously, not physical, something physical, but more
Mhm.
of a consequence for black women for them to respect them. So for example, if every black man said, look, um, and I don't think this would actually happen. But if every
Mhm.
black man was like, "Look, if we're not married and you're under my roof, then no children for you," I
Okay.
feel a lot of women would quote unquote respect him more because he's setting his boundaries. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I don't know. What do you think?
So just to rephrase the question, you're asking if black men should hold black women more accountable, like giving them consequences for certain things that they do?
Do you think if if they do that, that
Mhm.
black women will respect them more?
Consequences for what though? I think it's very specific about what it is that you are asking of black women, that
Mm.
the consequences would kind of vary. So you gave that example, but what is one that you feel is really impacting us now in society where black women should have more consequences?
Okay, so here's something that a standard that I have.
Okay.
um, Unless my life is in danger, I would never put my hands on a woman. And you get into arguments with your, girlfriends or wives. Um, if a girl ever puts her hand on me, I've done this before. If she puts her hand on me, right,
Mhm. Mhm.
she's gone.
Oh, absolutely. I don't
And
see anything wrong with that.
do you know what I mean? Yeah, but not everybody has that. So
Yeah.
and I've been very blessed. Careers go well and everything like that. And it's happened where okay, because there's more to lose,
Mhm.
there's more respect there because it's like you don't want to mess up the potential of what it could be. Does that make
Okay.
sense? So maybe that's the kind of consequence. What do you think?
So in that situation, you're saying that the woman respects you more because she has more to gain from you than a man who wasn't as accomplished in their career?
Well, just kind of more like if I'm the kind of person, and any man, if he's the kind of man that she desires,
Mm-hmm.
and he says, "Yo, these are my standards," and especially if she feels, because at the end of the day, we don't need each other to survive, but if we want to have a family and move forward, we do need each other. Really, we
Yeah.
do need each other.
Mm-hmm.
So, if a man is the kind of man that a woman desires,
Mm-hmm.
and he sets his standards, how if her moving forward is important to her, I think she'll abide by those standards for him.
Absolutely. And I think it goes both ways. I totally agree with that, because if I was a woman who let you walk all over me like a doormat versus someone who comes in and said, listen, this is what I accept, this is what I will not tolerate, I think that you would have more respect for me as well. So yes, I think standards, boundaries straight across the board, that will generate more respect for sure.
100%. I just want to read out a quick comment for Inesianza Kiara Moses. I'm sorry if I butchered your name. She says, in my opinion, women are empowered so much to be self-independent and can make them suddenly feel more superior. For example, when she earns more than him. I've seen an example like this in my circle of friends. Do you think that's true?
Absolutely. I've had the same conversation with my friends where some of them will say, if I make more than you can't call the shots in the relationship in any way. You're not going to tell me to do X, Y, and Z because you need to make more money. I disagree with that. I think that it's totally disrespectful. But yes, again, going back to feminism, women see that they have money, they can get status now. And so they feel like they can be superior to men. Yeah.
So here's the thing, because I don't think we will, and I don't think we should, obviously, go back to a time where women couldn't earn and be independent if they so choose to.
Mm-hmm.
But then how do we incorporate that into, or do we incorporate that into building relationships and family with one another?
I
Because if
don't
a
think.
woman's not going to respect a man because she earns a certain amount, and she doesn't want to take the position of, handling the majority of the financial burden,
Mm-hmm.
then how do we incorporate that?
Honestly, I think therapy, healing, because that's a mindset that needs to be shifted. You can take away someone's resources, but if that woman already has that type of mentality, it's going to surface in other parts of the relationship. And so I think that when women they lead with their career and their independence, it's usually something that might be due to past trauma with men, could be some sort of father issue. Something is always going to be the root of that. And I think that that's what we need to figure out.
Yeah. Um, I think I want to say there's a way, and there are always exceptions to a rule. So maybe this can't work for the majority. But
Okay.
Taylor Swift is a perfect example of, she's one of the most successful women on the planet,
Mm-hmm.
one of the most successful artists. Yet she's always been in relationships and had partners, and it works perfectly fine for her. I think she's been married to her husband for like the past 8 years now, and she's way
Oh,
more successful than
Taylor
he is.
Swift?
She isn't she?
She's married? I never knew that. I always knew Taylor Swift to have relationship issues. I didn't know she was married.
Yeah, I think she's been married. I did a video on it like a couple of months ago. I think she's been married since 2016.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so it's less than 10 years. It's less than 10
Yeah.
years. But she has always had relationships.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think she's doing differently? Because she's a very successful woman. She's very independent and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you think she's doing differently that maybe other successful women, especially our successful Black women, can
Yeah.
maybe take from her if they're looking to have that relationship with someone?
The biggest thing is skin tone difference. I think because she's white, she might have come from a family who raised her to be family and marriage minded. So even though she has certain levels of success, she realizes the importance of a family unit, the importance of having a man present. And I think that's where a lot of us as Black women are lacking. So I would say that for me personally, just from what I've seen in my experience with my friends, I think that's the root of a lot of it.
Okay, interesting. I'm going to challenge you on that, and only because I did a video kind of specific to this topic.
Okay.
Charlize Theron,
Mm-hmm.
very successful woman, right? Just like her, she's been perpetually single, and she's your blonde, blue-eyed white woman.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's race, because those two women are both very beautiful women, both very successful, but one is very different from the other, and one's getting different results. So I want to challenge you. Let's say I don't think race is a thing. What else do you think it might be? Or
I don't think that we can negate race, because that's not to say that is going to be a one size fits all thing. So that doesn't mean that there are some
True.
white women who won't experience the same thing. I don't know Charlize Theron's background. Does she have a good relationship with her father? So those are all things to kind of factor in. But I think that's something that we are commonly seeing within our community, because we know about the incarceration rates that men really aren't present, that's impacting us a lot because it's more common in Black culture than it is with other races.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. Um, what would you like to bring to the table? I've been asking you a lot. What would you like to
So
bring?
I actually want to circle it back because we talked a little bit about how people make fun of Will Smith. And
Yep.
I just want to talk more about mental health in the Black community,
Hmm.
and also why we don't take it seriously when it comes to Black men. So as a Black man, I'm really interested to know your perspective on that when it comes to caring for your mental health, and
Hmm.
how comfortable you feel with being vulnerable and transparent without facing judgment for it.
Sure. So personally, from my experience, um, I think there's the reason that Black men feel that maybe they can't address their mental health publicly is because for some reason there is this pressure on Black men to be the most masculine men in the world. There's a pressure on Black men to be the most physically dominating, to have the biggest Johnson, to be the best sexual professional, best in bed. I think and because there's such a pressure on Black men to be masculine,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where publicly they feel that they can't um, mentally open up. Now, I do think there's a level of upbringing as well, because to be fair, like, I meditate, so I take care of my own mental health. I would definitely openly have one therapy session a month if I could within my schedule, because we take care of our physical health, but we need to take care more of our
Mm-hmm.
mental health. But I feel that you know I think Black men not being that masculine, I think that's a big thing, because it's almost like, oh well, he's Black, so he's got to be like this in terms of his attractiveness. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. I think that's very true. But I guess the question is, why do we feel that masculinity means the absence of emotion? I think it means that you know how to regulate your emotions, but I've seen a lot of people, especially with this whole situation, that say men aren't supposed to be emotional. People aren't respecting him because he showed emotion in general. That's not something that you're supposed to do. And so I think
Mm.
that's a problem. But also it's being internalized because the people who are critiquing him, or any Black man for that matter, for being emotional, because we see the memes about Kanye West, Tyrese, you saw the memes about Will Smith. Like, we make fun of men who show any sort of vulnerability. They're
Mm.
internalizing it, and then you're dishing it out to your own people. So how do we move past that? And do you feel like Black men, or the Black community in general, is taking accountability for their role in that?
I think the way to move past it is, I think there's a difference between showing emotion and being dictated by your emotions.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And I think, and this goes for any man or woman, children are dictated by your emotions. Adults have emotions, but they are not controlled by them. They're not dictated by them. And I think that's the difference that we need to understand. Because um, a man who is, and let's be honest, it is acceptable for women to be dictated by their emotions. As men, we accept you being emotional and making irrational moves or decisions if it's coming from a place of emotions. We accept that of you.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think women accept that of men. And I think, I don't know whether I want to advocate to change that, because I think part of, if you're a woman who wants a quote unquote strong leader, if you want a capable man, a confident man, um, it's not that he can't have emotions, but I think it is seen as weakness if he is dictated by his emotions. Because it's like, well, can I trust he's making the right decision if it's coming from a purely emotional place, when we know emotions can change like that? Does that make
Yeah.
sense? So I
That
think, go on. What are you going to say?
I was just gonna say, I think that women need to be held to that same standard. Then I don't see a reason why. Yes, I'm gonna be more emotional and I'm more nurturing and I have more of the softer side because I'm a woman. But
Mm,
as you said, a part of being an adult is having that emotional intelligence. You're able to regulate your emotions. So I don't think that if we're being emotional in a way that it's toxic to someone else and we're just kind of lashing out, I don't really think that there's an excuse for that just because we're women.
I agree. I agree. There isn't an excuse for it. I think for men, the difference is that doesn't make her less attractive to us necessarily,
Mm,
or that doesn't make her less attractive to us in general, as much as when a woman sees a man and he's acting erratic because he's emotional, or whatever, she goes, "Oh, that gives the woman the ick." Do you know what I mean? It gives the woman the ick. I just want to read Chris E's welcome to the chat. I think generally it's the individualistic culture we have today as opposed to communal cultures we used to have.
mm,
That is a big one. We definitely prioritize individualism today over the
absolutely.
community, for sure.
So when do you think that shift happened where we did become more individualistic? Do you think it happened when we were brought over to America and became engulfed in this society, or is it something that happened more along the times of the feminist movement?
I do think it's around the feminist movement,
Okay.
because um, uh, I think before, and I said this in a podcast before, because there was the black community had a strong sense of community back in the day when times were very, very hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like like pre 1960, 70, we were there for each other through thick and thin. We would make things work. It was about the community. I think what happened was back then, especially for women, we sacrificed a lot of our happiness for the sake of community. And I think because feminism gave opportunity to women, which is a good thing, but then they started to be like, I can prioritize myself more. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what started to happen. And as people gain more opportunities and stuff, and we have more freedoms, now happiness seems to be the number one priority for us as opposed to the community. And I think we've gone so far the other way now, where we only prioritize individualism as opposed to community, which is why we don't have community as much. Does that make sense?
Mm, that does make sense. I would argue that it actually started during slavery, and I think it's kind of trickled down.
Okay.
If you just kind of look at history, I mean, I think that one of the biggest threats that we had as a people is that we were very unified. And so the way of controlling the masses during slavery times was to keep us separated. So that's why you had people who would snitch when they were trying to come up with rebellions. You had the separation based on colorism, who's in the house, who's on the field. So all of
Mm.
that was extremely divisive. And then I think that going into the 1950s, 60s, you think about the Black Panther Party, there were people who ratted on them to the FBI. So it was just constantly a trickle down effect. And I think that we've never really rebounded from that.
I, I agree in a sense. There have always been maybe a handful of people within the community who have not been on the best side for the cause. But I
Mm-hmm.
do think we had more of a community back then than we do today.
Absolutely. I agree with
I,
that.
I think we had more of that community than we did today. Um, Chris E's, I think it came as we began to erode religious substructures within society. Ooh, what do you think about
Oh,
that?
oh, that's tough. I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I do think that a lot of the principles that come with Christianity obviously honor a family unit. So once we steered away from that, then obviously you start to see the dynamic crumble.
Yeah.
I think it's a factor. I'm not sure if I would say like it's a huge factor though. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a factor for sure. I think the purpose of the teachings and the strictness of what a lot of religion preaches is actually for the benefit of the community,
Mm,
ironically. I was having a discussion with a friend the other day that monogamy is better for society than polygamy. That anytime
okay.
you've had this, that not that polygamy hasn't happened before, but
Mm-hmm.
if the norm is polygamy, then historically it's shown that societies begin to degrade.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and religion, every religion, maybe not every religion, because I don't know everyone, so I shouldn't say everyone, but the most mainstream religions, they all highly promote and strictly encourage being monogamous, which is better for the society as a whole. It's like saying, it's like thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not lie, because ultimately, if we had everybody stealing a lion,
Mhm.
then we're,
Yeah.
we're no better than the animals. We don't have a civilization, we don't have a society. So yes,
Mm.
it's better for the person. um it definitely played a factor. I don't know. It's interesting to see how it's interesting how I want to say that we've moved further away from religion, but
Mm.
then I think a lot of people in the black community are still, they go back to the church at some point. So I'm not sure, but I do think it definitely played a part. Um,
I have a
Go on,
comment about monogamy though,
go
because
for it.
monogamy and polygamy, a lot of people will criticize polygamy. And I'm just
Yes.
wondering, I don't think that people who claim to be monogamous truly practice monogamy.
Okay.
So there are people who will sleep with multiple different people, cheat while they're in a relationship. There are women who will stay with the man who cheats on them, sleeping with different women.
Hmm.
So I've always questioned, if you are tolerating that type of behavior, which is disrespect since it's supposed to be monogamy, why are you not for structured polygamy?
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
I think, um, I'll be honest, like, I'm not against polygamy. I'm not one of those
Mhm.
people who is like, we should definitely be monogamous. I think to I think to a certain extent, I think there is a biological imperative for men to not be sexually monogamous. But
Mhm.
maybe because I'm a man, I think women can have a similar as well.
Mhm.
But I think historically, being sexually promiscuous for a woman has been too risky, like evolutionary wise, because she could get pregnant, and if she didn't have someone to protect her, and this goes for many species, then it wasn't as advantageous for her to be as promiscuous because of safety and vulnerability reasons.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm not. I think we are moving. I mean, we already have that now because of the whole, the whole. I'm sure you've heard it. The top 20%.
Yes.
what
Yes.
what do you think about the whole top 20% of guys getting 80-90% of girls right now?
Oh, the whole high value man conversation. I feel like it's a become a growing problem because mainstream media is pushing going for that type of man. I think in our culture, we're seeing all the songs, the social media posts about being taken on trips, getting bought bags. So women are pursuing that. And so the everyday middle class working man is not really as desirable anymore. I was recently at an event here in Atlanta, and this
Mm.
guy was talking about how he made 300,000 a year, something like that. And he was saying how he felt like it was difficult to know if women really wanted him for his money or if they genuinely liked him. And a woman responded, 300,000, that's all you make? That's getting money to you? Like, so this is the viewpoint that a lot of women have, which is very unrealistic, because how many men are making $300,000 a year? How many of them are black? How many are within your age range? But
Yeah.
I think that social media has warped our standards for sure. And
Mm.
it's kind of this unrealistic view of who we actually have access to. So I think that we definitely feel like we have more options than we truly do.
Yeah, I agree. I think women always wanting the top man has always been the case. I think that's
Yeah.
always been the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
The internet has made it more accessible,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Um, but you're completely right. We For some reason well, not for some reason, I understand why, but we look at what we see online, like Instagram and people's lifestyles, and we go, I want a piece of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're all told that we can have that, and I think that's I don't think that's good doing us any good, because I think we try and find too much meaning in the lifestyle. Don't get me wrong, I'm all up for having a good life, and but I've experienced it myself, where I've been very fortunate in my career, etc. Since I bought my own place in London, I bought a nice car and everything. And girls from back in the woodworks are like, "Oh, hey, how you doing? Like, what's going on? Blah 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 blah." And
Yeah.
for me, and like, you know, I'm like I said, I'm fortunate. I've kind of built a name for myself in the industry. People know who I am and stuff, and I'm working with great people. And for me, it's like, oh, how? Not saying that I'm not at a level where women would want me for that, but I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I've recognized that that's made me a more attractive prospect because of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't hold it against women because I think it's part of a woman's nature to find that attractive men. You know, men and women look for different things. Um, but I think the higher a man goes, then the more a woman can he can suspect, like, is she in it? Is she in it because she wants me?
Yeah. I
Um,
part of me is definitely normal for women. I would say that from the male perspective, I mean, the same thing can be said about women who are attractive or who have a certain physique. So women are looking for money. You guys are looking for youthfulness, women who are fit. So it does kind of go both ways. But
yeah.
my question for you, do you think that social media would have such an impact on our standards in a relationship if we had tighter family units? So if we had two-parent homes instilling values in their children, do you feel like it would still have the same effect or would there be a difference there?
I think it would still have a level of influence, but I don't think it would have as strong as such. And the reason I say this is because with other racial groups, they have
Mhm.
social media too, but it has less of an influence. There is definitely an influence,
Mhm.
especially with each generation. The young generation are going to be more open-minded, more forward-thinking, or they're going to be more susceptible to, uh, you know, someone who's 18 today is going to be more influenced by Instagram than someone who's 80, even if they both have Instagram,
Yeah.
right? So I think if we had stronger family units and tighter family units, I think we would, yeah, it would have less of an influence. I'm not going to say it would have zero because I don't think it would have zero.
I agree.
Um, but yeah, I want to ask you: Do you think, what do you think of Kevin Samuels,
The Godfather.
the Godfather?
I have a mixed feelings on him. So
Okay.
I think that he does make points that are valid. I think that it's mostly his approach that people don't like. I also
Mm,
do feel like he takes that approach because it's theatrical and that's what his audience likes. So I think that we need to kind of understand that as well, that he is giving his audience what they want.
mm.
Um, I think a problem that's come from Kevin Samuel's community because his viewers are often on my channel in my comments saying things.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that he is talking about things from what high value men want. There are a
Mm,
lot of men who are not high value that watch his channel, and they are
mm.
adopting those beliefs and applying it to themselves, and they now have a skewed outlook on women. So I think that's the biggest thing, that his message is not quite matching the audience, if that makes sense.
I hear that. I don't disagree. I do think it's funny because anytime I've talked to women who know him, they have more of an issue with how he says things, not what he says,
Hmm.
which I think is just a clear indicator of a how men and women communicate differently, but also b, I think, if I'm being honest, I don't think women have heard uh, as much direct criticism um, in today's day and age, because as men we hear it all the time, and he's like that with men, even harsher to some degree. But I think we communicate differently. Um, I do agree that that some there it's easier for some men who maybe aren't on that level to adopt that high level mindset. So when they
Hmm.
deal with women, they're like, well, I'm this, and you're not bringing this. What do you bring to the table for me?
Yeah.
And I think that here's the thing. I agree that it can skew their opinion of women, or what a woman should do for them if they're not on that level. But I think there's a level of validation if a man is in his prime, the same way a woman is in her prime. So like, if a woman is, when a woman's, young and attractive or whatever, and she's getting a lot of attention, she's not just gonna accept any soy boy. If she has a lot to offer by what men want, she has a lot to offer. So if a
Hmm.
man has, if a man, especially nowadays, like, I don't know, if a man owns his own home, has a stable job, let's say it's his mid 30s, he has no kids, no baby mamas or anything like that, which I think in the black community, that's not always the best, easiest to find.
Yeah, that's a diamond in the rough, a rare breed.
Right. So
Yeah.
if you have a man who is to supply and demand, if you have a man who is very desirable, especially if he's at a point where he wants to start having a family and he can support his family, then I do agree that he should have a level of standards for women that he is going to commit himself to if he's bringing a lot to the table by her standards. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but and that's fine. In that case, that would probably be a high value man. But what about the
Mm.
men who aren't that? If you're not bringing those things to the table, it's like you are a nickel and you're requesting me to be a dime or a quarter or a dollar bill, and it's not matching up the way that it should. And I feel like I see that a lot.
Yeah. So what do you think those average men are asking from women that you feel they don't have? I don't disagree with you, but I want to hear specifically that you feel that they are not justified in asking for because they're not high value.
I think the biggest thing that women have complaints about is having the level of income to demand that a woman cater to all of your needs, without being able to give her the convenience of not having to work or having to do other things. So a lot of women from their perspective is, wait, so you want me to do everything for you? I think the cooking, cleaning, domesticated thing comes up a lot, submission, but I still have to go to work and do everything that you're doing. So this is again what women are saying. It's like, how are you benefiting me aside from being a partner? Because I think that's important to having someone who has your back and everything. But if you're
Mm.
requesting all of these extra demands from me, but you don't have the finances to benefit me for doing all those things, then what are you bringing to the table that is
Okay.
equal to what I'm bringing?
I think that's a fair point. I think I understand that. Here's what I'll ask though, is that, and this is something that Kevin Samuels has said,
Mm-hmm.
is that in the Asian community or the Latino community, those men aren't high earnings, yet those women will do that for them. So,
Mm-hmm.
so why won't the black women do that for us? Is the question I think a lot of guys will have, because there are different things that men will have to do. So he may not be the highest earner, but guess what? When there's a bump in the night, I'm the one risking my life to protect you.
Mm-hmm.
When a sacrifice has to be made, I'm the one who's sacrificing. Okay, if you're working as well, contributing to the household bills, I understand that. Fair enough. But there are other things that men, it's us who go fight the wars for you.
Mm-hmm.
We don't ask you to fight the wars for us. We don't ask you to join us on the front lines, though. I think something in the US recently, over the past few years, said women are now eligible for the draft, which I was like,
Oh no, no,
shit,
no, no.
man. Like, if you ask for equality, you
Oh
got it,
no.
man. So I think so. So what I would say into that is,
Mm-hmm.
in other ethnic communities, the women will do that for the man that she's chosen, no matter how much he earns. So
Mm.
why won't our women do that for us?
That's a valid point. I don't know if I have an answer to that. I think that just in discussions I've had with women,
Mm,
um, the viewpoint that they have is that men from other cultures respect their women more than the men in our culture respect women. So this kind of goes back to the level of respect that we have for one another. Because I've never really seen in other cultures their men are saying, yeah, I don't like date, I'm a Hispanic man, I don't like dating Hispanic women. Hispanic women are X, Y, and Z, I don't want to date them, I'm going to date outside of my race only. And like we see a lot of those dynamics within each other. So maybe that's a part of it, just the respect level isn't there. Men aren't, from women's perspective, aren't really trying to do marriage or serious commitment, which I think is a big difference in other cultures as well. So it could be a combination of all those things.
yeah, I hear that. I hear that. Why do you think why do you think certain men say, for example, that they won't date black women if they're black men? Why do you think they're saying
Attitude,
that?
you're not easy to work with, not willing
Okay.
to learn, not willing to compromise. So those are some of the common stereotypes that I hear.
Do you think that's true? Do you think that's true, or
I
what do you
think there
think?
actually is some truth to it. I do. I'm not gonna disagree. I think that the biggest thing with a lot of Black women is that we feel that, there's two things. We see submission and femininity as being the same thing. And that's not
Mm,
always the case. I think there's more that comes along with being feminine. But a lot of women feel like femininity is something that a person has to earn. I don't really agree with that. I think you're either a feminine person or you're not. Like if you are genuinely a feminine person, that's going to be your persona 24/7. You know what I'm saying? You might adjust things based on the level of the relationship that you have with someone, but we don't do that. So I can definitely see that being a reason why Black men would say that.
yeah, I think so. You said about cooperation, submission, etc. Right?
Mhm.
I think that, you said that a lot of black women feel like the man has to earn that
Mm-hmm.
from her. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, like you said, I think the difference is maybe as a general thing in from other racial groups, that the women are that, and they choose the man they want to share that with, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to being like, oh, I'm only gonna do that when you earn that from me.
Yeah.
So I was talking to a friend the other day who, it's funny because I think sometimes black women think that they don't that a black man's with a non-black woman because he finds other women attractive, and
Mm.
that's like 0.5% of black men. No, in fact, I think that's 0.1% of black men. The majority of black men by would prefer to end up with a black woman.
I agree with that.
I think they would prefer to, because the interesting thing is black immigrants, as in black women who are from other cultures, especially if they are either from the Caribbean or African, or especially, they don't struggle getting the
Mm-hmm.
men. So I think maybe there's a mindset, but that doesn't mean it's not just all in the black women, because I think as black men, I don't think we've had enough strong male role models. Well, I mean, they took them out. Malcolm X,
Yeah.
I'd say Louis Farrakhan. I mean, he's still around, but he was a strong black male role model in terms of how to conduct yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in a lot of hostile environments. And
Yeah.
this is kind of going back. Do you think Louis Farrakhan or Malcolm X would have acted and conducted themselves the way Will Smith did in that situation?
uh Malcolm X. No, I don't think Malcolm X would have done it. I like Malcolm X had a little spice to him, but I think that he knew when to do certain things. So I think that he would have known that that wasn't the time or place. Or
Yeah,
Malcolm X would have read you with a speech where you felt like he slapped you in the face, but all he did was use his words. So
that's
no, I
right.
don't think he would have. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for me, kind of relating back to the whole Will Smith thing, being a role model, he should know better because he's in that level of position.
Mm-hmm.
And someone like Malcolm X recognizes that we do have to hold ourselves to a certain standard for the prosperity of black people. I want to ask you a question, just shifting for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever gone through an all men are trash phase, or are you in that now?
I have gone through that phase before. I'm definitely not in that space now, for sure.
Okay. What what uh what put you into that mindset of all men are trash, and then what brought you out of that?
I think, well, definitely what put me in that mindset is that I kept dealing with the same types of men. So when you keep seeing the same thing over and over again with different people, you start to say, okay, everybody is trash. What took me out of it is reflection within myself,
Yeah.
accountability, because it's like, okay, you are what you attract in most cases. So I think that if you are constantly attracting people who are toxic, they're sensing something within you that you might
Mhm.
need to work on. And so it's not fair if I'm picking these men and passing up on good men, because there were good men who tried to approach me and I might have thought they were too nice or they weren't attractive enough or things like that. So
Yeah.
I just realized it was contradictory for me to say that all men are trash when obviously there were decent men out there that I didn't pay attention to.
Yeah. So self-reflection kind of, you felt, helped brought you out of that. Uh,
Self-reflection and accountability for sure, yeah.
and accountability. Hear that?
Mhm.
That's great. Within the black community, do you think black women prefer the street guy or the office guy?
Um, I think it depends on what phase in her life that the woman is in. I think a woman who still has a lot of unresolved trauma, again, daddy issues, you might like, I like to say it's a hook booger phase. So you might like the hook boogers out there. I definitely had
Yeah.
that phase too. I think that also sometimes women who have some sort of issues with commitment. They tend to go after men who they know subconsciously is not going to give them the commitment that other types of men would. And so they
Mm.
gravitate toward men who are like that. And you might not realize it, but it's making you feel comfortable because you have an issue with commitment. So I think it's a whirlwind of all of those things.
Do you think they feel that they can change his mind?
Women always feel like we could change somebody's mind. We love to fall in love with potential. I mean, I can tell you day one of meeting you, I do not want a relationship. This is
Yep.
strictly about sex. And the woman will go, okay, well, I think he's going to change his mind and still continue on. And then 3 months later, we're upset crying that the man doesn't want a relationship. So, yes, we
Very
do.
true. So how? So let's say if you were talking to a female friend of yours who's like that, and
Hmm.
she wants commitment, but she keeps choosing the kind of guys who are unavailable because she feels she can change his mind or because he's more attractive, etc. What what advice would you give her?
Um, I've taken an approach where I don't give people direct advice. I ask them questions to kind of help them form those opinions for themselves.
Okay.
So, how can I give an example of this? So it's sort of different from this situation, but I would use the same technique. So I had a friend who said that if she got married, she wouldn't want to take the guy's last name. She said, at the most, I would want to hyphenate it. I'm not taking his last name. And
Okay.
instead of me being like, well, do you feel like that would be offensive to him? I'm like, well, why is it? Is that some sort of an issue with identity? What do you feel you're losing if you do that? So you ask probing questions and people kind of say things out loud and then they
Very
form
true.
those conclusions for themselves.
100%. When I have sessions with my clients, that's exactly what I do. So
Yeah.
I completely 100%. And sometimes there's a lot of waiting because you have to just be like, you ask them a question, they're like, oh crap, I actually don't know why.
Yes.
And I think you're right because it initiates the reflective process
Hmm.
um, for the person. Um, did you want to talk about simping?
I did. I was gonna say I would love to dive into this because
Come at me, girl.
we know Will Smith got called a simp. And you know what? I'm gonna step away from Will and Jada because I feel like they have a lot of layers. So no.
Yes.
But one example that I've used recently is Sierra and Russell Wilson. I think
Mm,
Russell Wilson is a very well-rounded guy. I love Sierra. I think she's very classy. She just exudes positive energy. Yet a lot of people criticize their relationship and they say that he's a simp, so on and so forth. And to me, all he does is honor his wife. I don't see
mm.
what he has done to make him a simp, but I see that that's a common sentiment. If someone is defending women or honoring women, oftentimes Black women, they are considered a simp. And I just wanted to know why that is.
Okay, so I think I want to define simping behavior first, or
Okay.
what I believe it is, because I wouldn't necessarily think that Sharon Russell, what he was simping, but simping is when you are giving un- unearned, uh, maybe I would say unearned, but I think what people call simping is unearned attention, time, and chivalrous behavior to a woman who is not giving you anything in return. So, for example, what I mean is like, uh, the reason it's called a simping is if a guy is posting and blowing up a girl's phone, I think you're gorgeous, I think you're amazing. He's giving us all this time and attention, and she's not
Mhm.
giving him anything in return. That's simping. But then if
Okay.
a guy's doing that with a girl that he's dating and she's responding saying, I think you're great, like you really turn me on, you're doing all this, that's reciprocal.
Okay.
Simping behavior is when it's only a one-way street. So,
So that's why you say Will is a simp because Jada's not reciprocating his efforts.
um I don't mm, I don't know if I would call him a simp.
Okay.
I would say that she doesn't respect him. And
Hmm.
I think the reason why people will call him a simp is because if a man is investing time and attention in a woman and she's not reciprocating, that means she doesn't respect him. She may
Hmm.
like the attention, but she doesn't respect him as an attractive prospect for her. Because if she did, she would probably reciprocate,
Hmm.
right? And I think it's the lack of respect that people see from Jada to Will is why they see it as simping. But if a man has a girlfriend or his wife,
Hmm.
no, like of course you're gonna honoring her and bigging her up. That's not simp behavior. Not to me. Not That's not simp behavior. I had it before where I went on podcast and people were like, they're like, oh, they don't know if I'm and their words, not mine. They don't know if I'm a quote unquote alpha male or if I'm a simp behavior or whatever, because I'm like, oh, well, this is what I'm like when I'm single. But when I have a girlfriend, she's my woman and I take care of her. Of course, I'm going to big her up because I want her to feel good around me. But also, that's predicated because she makes me feel good around her. So that's what I would say simping is, and I don't think I don't think black women are the ones who guys simp for. I think guys simp for a lot because there are a lot of desperate guys out there, man, and they feel the only
Hmm.
way. even just a girl saying thank you, they're like, she said thank you to me. Oh my gosh, I got some attention.
Yes, yes, yes. See, I can see that, but I feel like from what I've been seeing is that that's not the context that people are using simping in. I
Sure.
think that people are using simping in the equivalent of pandering, just from what I've seen.
Yeah.
For example, I had a YouTube video where it was something, I think it was actually about a Kevin Samuels reaction that I did. So talked
Okay.
about Black women and, power dynamics and things like that with Black men. And I think that someone commented and said something like, I love Black women, just something that was a positive comment. And then people commented, said he was a simp. So that's why I'm saying in situations like this, because it's repeated where I'm seeing this, where it's like, I think that whenever something positive is said about a Black woman, people will jump in and be like, you're a simp. So it's like, but why is that?
Yeah, I wouldn't call that simping, but I think the equivalent. Let me read Jalone Moore quickly. Jalone Moore. The reason why Russell is considered a simp by men is because he fits the nice guys finish last criteria. Do you agree with that? Do you think he's a nice guy who does he fit the nice guy finish last or?
Does he? Okay, so let's take a step back in his history. He was married before the wife
Mhm.
cheated on him, right? And the wife
Mhm.
is not Black, by the way, so let's point that out. And then I just feel like that needed to be said. And then he met Sierra. I don't know. I can't say that because it's like maybe nice guys do finish last because women are in a space in their earlier years where we said that hood booger phase. She dated Future, that didn't go well. She realized I need to get my life together. I'm making bad choices, but I don't think that reflects poorly on him. She just kind of upped her standards. And I think that with their situation, I don't think that people felt a Black baby mama was supposed to get a man like him. Honestly, I think that's what it boils down to. They
I
see
hear
who
that.
she picked before and they're like, you don't deserve this type of guy. So automatically he's a simp. They don't respect her as much because something that didn't have anything to do with her. She didn't ask Future to cheat on her and do all this. They were engaged. She thought they were getting married. So I think that in her head, she might have been doing everything right. But now it's like she has this cloud hanging over her because she had that background.
Yeah, I think what it's seen as is that he wasn't her first choice, and I
But how
think
would
that's
he have been her first choice if he was married?
say again.
But he was a married man. So it's like naturally that wasn't going to be her first choice.
But do you think? I think it's so. I guess I'll ask you. Do you think if he was available, do you think she would have chosen him over Future the first time?
That's a good question. That's very, very valid. I
Because
don't
because I
know.
think that's where it comes from. What do you think? Do you think she would have?
I think that if she was in a space where she was attracting men like that because of something going on within herself, no, I think she either would have been intimidated by someone like that. She would have felt like he was too good to be true and kind of self sabotage. I think that something would have happened where she wouldn't have appreciated it as much. So I do agree with that. Yes.
I hear that. I hear that. Um, saying what you were saying earlier about simping, about a man saying a good thing about a woman. I think that's the same mentality when women call other women pick me's.
Hmm.
When a woman does something with a primary purpose to attract a man or for a man, girls go, "Oh, she's a pick me." Blah 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 blah. Why do you think women do that?
So I think I will add something to that because I think that a pick me is someone who demeans other women in the process of trying to look more attractive to other men. So I
Mm,
think that that is what women usually have an issue with. For example, there are women out there who will be like, I cook and I clean. None of you women do this nowadays. That would be considered a pick me because why do you have to add what other women are doing? Just say what you do, whatever, move on with your day.
yeah.
So I do get that. But if it's just something where you're trying to get the attention of men, is that always a bad thing? Like, why is it bad to present yourself in a way where you want to get attention from the opposite sex?
It's very true. Yeah, I think it's the equivalent that if a woman is doing anything for the sole pleasure of a man, she's seen as she's seen as a pick me. And I think there's a level of the feminist voice being like, you shouldn't
Mhm.
be doing anything to please a man because you're strong, independent women. And it's kind of like, look, you shouldn't do that for any man. But if there's a man that you like and you want to invest in, then why wouldn't you do that for him?
I agree. But it's like on the men's side, why is that now the viewpoint that men have with other men? Because I think that's the same dynamic that's happening. For example, let's
Mm,
say it's a man who is in his whole phase, right? He's in his prime. He could have passed up a ton of good women, right? Like he just wasn't ready for that.
100%.
And then later on, he now decides that he wants to settle down. I feel like that's normalized. But when you have a woman who might have gone through a similar journey, now all of a sudden that man is a pick me. Like, why is there, a simp? So why is there a word for men who do that, but for women on the opposite side of things, like if they're being picked later, that's just normal. There's no term for it.
So I want to outline what I believe the difference is between a man going through his hoe phase, then choosing a woman, and then a woman going through her hoe phase and choosing a man.
Okay.
I think the difference is for a lot of men, when they go through their hoe phase, right, or when they're being very promiscuous, they are choosing women that they're not looking to get into a relationship with, right?
Okay.
So if a guy's just looking to have fun, he's going to choose the party promiscuous girl over the Christian church girl because he's just looking to have fun. The Christian church girl probably isn't going to have that with him, right? Yet when he's looking for something serious, then he shifts, and ultimately he may choose a girl that for a relationship, she's his first choice, and that's who he gets. Whereas, like we said earlier in the conversation, a woman will want to change a guy's mind. So it means that they were dealing with guys who they would want a commitment with, but they couldn't get it from him. And so they then go to the guys later on where perceivably they're not getting the same level of attention. They're like, well, I'm going to go to the guys now who I know I definitely can because I'm not getting the same level of opportunities with the guys I am before. And I think that's what the difference is and where that comes from. Is that I'm not saying a woman can't choose a guy to have fun with, who she doesn't see long term, but I think it happens more that a woman gets involved with a guy that she's having fun with and wants to change his mind. So then any guy after that is seen as second choice, and if he's accepting being second choice, then that's seen as simping.
Okay. Actually, I can understand that logic. That makes a lot of sense. So if the woman wasn't in the headspace of wanting to change someone, she just is not ready for a relationship. She's living her best life. She just wants to do casual things. Do you think it would be respected more if she then later on decided, I want to settle down. Now I'm picking a nice guy?
I think it would be respected more. But then okay. I think it would be respected more, but I think that's an exception, not the rule. As in, women tend to deal with their most attractive prospects when, for example, in their 20s rather than when in their 30s, as a general rule, right? So usually their first choice for a relationship is going to be when they're younger. Also, as well, and this is, I'm saying, what guys say, not, necessarily my opinion, but it's kind of like men and women go through their different primes at different seasons in their life of when they're most attractive to the other gender. And it's seen as a guy's like, okay, well, you didn't want me when you were at your most desirable for me. But yet now you want me to, quote unquote, accept you because you're not getting the level of attention that you did before. When here's the thing as well, something else I think is different with the manosphere, the red pill, is that every guy thinks he's going like that in his life. And not every guy is. In fact, most guys aren't. If you're a guy working on your purpose, you're developing a building, then you do that. But most guys don't. But if we take the example that a guy is doing that, he's like, well, now I'm hitting my prime. And now I'm getting everything that I would like. So why would I accept it? It's kind of like, sounds bad. It's kind of like investing in a company. It's like, imagine a company comes to you to invest in, right? And they're like, look, you spend $10,000, you're going to earn 10%, right? And then you go, nah, I'm not going to. And then in 10 years time, that company is worth over 100 million. And you're going back saying, hey, I'm ready to invest that 10,000 for 10% now. And the company's like, no, baby girl. The price is 100,000 now.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense. I think it's logical, right? I think that a lot of women don't like hearing these things because we are not often logical thinkers. I think that we
Mm.
think with emotion or we act on emotion a lot. So that makes sense to me. But it sounds to me like the middle ground would just be for women when they're younger to date older men. Do you agree with that? Because then at that point, he's closer to his prime. She is in her prime because she's younger. So do you think that that would be a possible solution moving forward?
Well, I think I think most women date older men already. They always
Really?
have. Yeah, I think a woman who is, I think when we become adults, like most women do date men who are, on average, most women date men who are 3 to 7 years older than them,
Mhm.
majority. So, and I also think, evolutionary speaking, I think a big part of why women naturally generally mature faster than men is because the fortunate or unfortunate reality is women have to kind of make that decision before men do because there's a biological clock, blah blah blah. So I think it's not uncommon that, if women get to that point of wanting to settle down quicker than men, so it makes sense if she goes with an older man. But that doesn't mean that she can't go younger. I mean, I'll be honest, most women I've dated have actually been older than me.
Really?
But yeah, but I think I'm an exception to the rule, and not because of any kind of particular reason, mainly just because I feel that from a dating perspective, I found to be more emotionally mature and resonate on a different level.
Mhm.
If I'm spending time with someone, I mean, people can have casual fun with, whoever. But so yeah, I think women are already dating older. Do you not think so?
Um, I think it's a mix. I definitely think
Okay.
it's a mix. Me personally, I haven't really dated too much older than, well, that's a lie. I have dated older than me, but I think the issue is that I was too young mentally when I was trying to date older men. So they were at the point where they want to settle down. And I'm like, no, like I'm 18, 19 years old, you know? So I get that piece of it.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that maybe as women get more mature and they realize, like you said, the biological clock is kicking and they realize that they might have to go a little bit older. And maybe some men at that point will still see them as a younger woman. So they
Which
have some
happens.
advantages to that. So yeah.
I think that definitely happens. I think that depending on at what age she wants to start doing that, I think the age of the man is going to get older.
Yeah.
So like, if she gets to 35,
Mhm.
he's probably, if she was 24 dating guys who were 26, 27, if she's
Mhm.
34, it's not unlikely that she's dating guys who are 36, 37, but she's probably going to choose a man more who's 40, or who's
Yeah.
maybe even 45. So yeah. Was there something else you wanted to bring to the table that we could chat about?
Yeah. So I guess kind of piggybacking off of that, the danger
Yeah.
zone that Kevin Samuels talks about.
Oh
What are your
yes.
thoughts on that? Do you agree with this danger zone? Do you think that it's kind of shifted now? Like what do you think?
Just to clarify, he says the danger zone is what, from 27 to 35? Is that what he says?
Yes, yeah, about that range.
I think that's a bit harsh. I would, if we're taking the concept of what he's calling the danger zone, I would say it's 31 plus. And the reason
Okay.
I say that is because I don't I I don't think so. The common trope is that, women's primal agency, which is their looks, start to degrade at 26, 27. So that's why they go into the danger zone. I don't think that's true. I think it can depend on the woman, but I think most women today, if they look after themselves, they're still they're as attractive when they're 31 as when they were 28. And they're as
Mhm.
attractive when they were 28 as maybe when they were 26, 27. Every men as well, bodies start to change, your metabolism slows down, you don't want to go out as much, you get more of a hangover. So those natural things happen. But I don't think it's like, if we're using a metric, if a girl was like a 9 when she's 26, she's not going to suddenly be a 7 when she's 28 if she's still the same girl. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
I do think there is validity in acknowledging that if you're a woman who wants to have family and have kids, um, you know, kind of 34 plus, other complications do start to happen. And I think
Mhm.
the reason he says the danger zone so young is because, I said this in one of my videos, that If we work backwards, right? So let's say you want to have your first child by the age of 35,
Mm-hmm.
right? That means you got pregnant at 34.
Mm-hmm.
Now, ideally, you would be married before you start having kids, right? That's the
Mm-hmm.
best way to do it. So let's say you got married at 34 and you got pregnant just like that. In fact, let's not even say it. The average person, for the average couple, it takes anywhere between 6 to 18 months to get pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
So if you got pregnant at 34, you probably started trying when you were 32.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you start trying when you get married. So let's say you got married at 32, you start trying at 32, right? Most people's engagements last between 12 to 18 months, some even
Mm-hmm.
24 months. So let's say you're married by 32, you probably got engaged when you were 31,
Mm-hmm.
like if we're keeping it small. Now, the truth is, for the average relationship, they're together for 3 to 4 years before he pops the question.
Yeah.
So if he's going to pop the question, get engaged at 31, you've met him to what, by 27, 28,
Yeah.
which is where his danger zone is.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That
So
does.
now, so it's kind of like, I've said this in one of my videos, like if you're the average, and don't get me wrong, it happens where, a guy's 40, he's ready to have that, a woman's 31, and he's like, they're engaged within 6 months, and then she's
Mhm.
pregnant the next year. That does happen. But that's the exception, not the rule.
Yeah.
It generally doesn't happen that way. So if you think, okay, I want to be married and have a kid by then, it's roughly anywhere between a 4 to 7 year process for
Mm-hmm.
the average person. And if you used to think that, okay, kind of 34 plus is when risks start happening for pregnancy and stuff, you're doing the math backwards. By late 20s, for most women, that's the most ideal point to think, okay, the next man I choose is the guy I'm doing life with. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
It does. It does. So how do you feel we can circumvent this? Because I think that what's happening from my perspective is that women do get to the danger zone and they make that realization that you just said, like, oh shoot, maybe I should have started a few years ago. But I think that if we push for people to be marriage minded in our community, that we would start a lot earlier. So
Yep.
seeing as though the state of Black families is kind of in disarray, do you feel like we can make that progress where these marriages and children are happening earlier, or do you think it will get continuously worse?
I think the only way for things to start happening earlier is if the laws change. Because as we know, men are looking at marriage and they're like, it's not a good deal, man.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're the kind of man who has shit to lose.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're the kind of man who has options, like, let's even pretend, if we just say that it's all good being, a guy who women see doesn't have a lot to offer and you want to get married, but you're not getting chosen, let's be honest. So if you're the kind of man who is seen as eligible for marriage today, and the way the laws are set up, the smart man is going, I'm not sure if this is for me. So
Mm.
I think in order for us to promote it, I think the laws need to change because a lot of men are walking away from marriage. We do need to encourage it sooner. If women want to get to a point where, they're in their early 30s and they want to have this, whatever. But then at the same time, a lot of women are, and I understand, it's understandable. It's not criticism. In their early 20s, they're not prioritizing, marriage and stuff. They want to have fun or they're prioritizing their career. So it's, I guess I have to ask you, like, do you think more women can start to prioritize that, or do you think that less women will continue to when they're young?
Uh, I think that we have to get over this fixation with prioritizing degrees
Hmm.
and doing all your career goal stuff first. I think it's okay to work on that, but I don't think that we realize that we can multitask. Being in a relationship doesn't mean that you can't pursue those things, but
Very
that's
true.
not what we're taught. So early ages, messages that I'm getting taught, because my mom, she got married pretty early. I think she got married when she was around 21, 22. And she
Mm.
always said, that's too early. I wish I hadn't gotten married that young. So when you're
Mm.
hearing that, you're like, okay, I'm young. I still have time. I still have time. You keep pushing it to the side. The next thing you know, 30s are creeping up and you're like, okay, I didn't prioritize because my family told me not to. So I think it goes back to those messages that we're getting in our early ages.
So do you think So do you, because if we take Kevin Samuels for example, and there are plenty of other channels now that are saying that, look, as women, if you want to have marriage by 30, etc., you need to start prioritizing this a lot sooner than you have been. Do you
Mm-hmm.
think younger women are hearing that and taking that on board, or do you think they're going, nah, I want to live my life?
I'm just reading Kevin Samuels' comments. I think that a lot of younger women are listening to his
Okay.
messages.
Yeah.
But then you got the ones who are caught up in social media. They're not thinking about marriage because, like we said, they want that high lifestyle. They don't care if it's a rapper one day, a ball player the next day, as long as they're getting what they want out of the situation. So I think it
Yeah.
depends on that specific woman and how she discerns the messages that she's seeing in mainstream media.
Yeah. Do you think that, let me ask this question first, and I'll ask you this. Quintus West would be curious to hear when your mama says the ideal marriage age is. I'm assuming he's speaking to you.
Yeah. She never said, although I will say that once I hit age, I'm going to say 25, when I was 25, she started having discussions like, so you don't have a boyfriend. Do you want to have kids? Don't you think you should be meeting someone now? So it was like, okay, so the message all my life was 21, 22 is too early. Now I'm
Yeah.
25. I think I'm hitting the point that you think I'm supposed to be meeting someone. So I'm going to say around like 25 might be the age that she
Okay.
thinks.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I hear that. I want to ask a question. You're saying about the girls who are young who are getting the attention from the superstars, the athletes, etc., right? Do
Mhm.
you think so? If for let's say for young women, if they were told, okay, there's a 5% chance you can get this high value guy, or there's a
Mhm.
90% chance you can get this average guy to have what you want, what do you think they would choose?
The 90%.
You think they
But
would?
the problem is that I don't think that they're listening to people who are telling them that.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
like you said earlier, I think social media gives us unrealistic viewpoints of how many options we have. So I think that they are
Mm,
looking at that. One thing that someone said to me recently, and I'm like, oh, it's simple, but it's true. And he's like,
yeah.
women, you guys mistake how many options you have because you have a bunch of men in your DM. You can have 100 men in your DM. Out of that 100, how many of them are seriously going to date you? How many are going to want to marry you? So then when you start to break it down, you realize that you don't have as many options for a serious commitment as you thought you would.
100%. One thing that I say to my clients and teach my videos is understanding the difference between just sexual attention and relationship attention, and they are
Mhm.
not the same thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, because as a woman, it's easy for you to go out and get sex with a guy, but to get commitment is different. And yeah, it's absolutely true. What do you think is something that, so if we say that's a common mistake that modern women make, what do you think
Mhm.
is a common modern mistake that men make in regards to women today?
Mm. I think they make the mistake, kind of what you mentioned, that they don't benefit from higher level commitment. So I
Yeah,
recently went to, do you watch The Roommates by any chance, their podcast?
I I do. Yes.
So they had a live podcast here in Atlanta, and this same thing came up where someone said, for men who are making more money, it doesn't really benefit us. What are we getting out of it? And the viewpoint, their response was that it's about leaving behind a legacy. Like if you really care about what your name is going to leave in the world, the mark that you're going to leave, you're going to want to take those steps to have a respectable marriage. I mean, in a lot of corporate settings, you are favored more if you have a spouse versus being someone who's single. So it's factoring in all those things. And I think that these are the things that men are overlooking. So
Mm,
from their viewpoint, you're not benefiting, which in actuality you would if you were able to commit to a woman.
yeah. If that is what you want ultimately, if
Yes.
if the guy
Yeah.
has to want that. What was it like being at their podcast live?
Oh Lord, it was Atlanta women were very, very they were fiery during that session. So it was very, very interesting.
um, I'm gonna ask this age-old question. Uh, is it okay for high value men to exercise options?
Man, no. I don't agree with that. I know that's a common sentiment, but No, I can't say that I would ever allow that. No, I know realistically there are a lot of people who are high value, and the women realize that they're providing all these other things, they're bringing so many other things to the table, so it's realistic for the longevity of the relationship for them to have their little side pieces. I just
Mm.
don't know if I could ever get behind that, which is why
We
honestly I've had conversations with myself where I'm hearing these things and I'm like, if this is the way a high value man thinks, do I even want a high value man? Because I don't know if my values would align with that type of person.
100%. And it is something I try and say is that um, you it depends how important it is to you, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and that not every woman is suitable to be with a high value man, and not
Mm-hmm.
every man is suitable to be, you know, like for example, the quote unquote the high value woman or the very desirable woman who's going to expect a man to provide this certain level of lifestyle, etc. Maybe that she's not suitable for you, you know, and that's
Mm-hmm.
okay because you're going to be happier with someone who's more compatible than somebody who on paper looks better.
Exactly. I agree. What do you think a high value woman is?
um I would say well, I would say most the woman who is sought for commitment by the majority of men,
Okay.
I would say, as in like, so she's sought for commitment by, you know, the entire scale range of men, guys who, you know, arguably don't have that much to offer to guys who have everything to offer.
Mm-hmm.
So like, um I'm trying to think of. So Rihanna is probably seen as high value because so many guys across the board wanted to commit to her, to
To
my
commit, or did
understanding.
they want her sexually?
Well, I guess I'm making an assumption. I feel maybe I'm just looking at Drake. I'm looking at Drake.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
Drake was just. Here's a question: Do you think Drake has simp behavior?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah,
Um, I guess based on the definition that you gave for Rihanna, yes.
yeah,
I think that
and
she
Nicki
has.
Minaj as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. I forgot about Nicki. I think they've made it pretty clear that they don't see him in that way. And I'm still confused on him and Rihanna's relationship. I think that he was kind of like a safe choice for her. Like if she
Yeah.
did end up with him, I feel like she might have felt like she settled because that's obviously not what she wanted. So yeah, I guess he would be a simp.
In what ways do you think she would have felt that she had settled? Because arguably he's probably the most successful rapper in the game right now, like
Mm-hmm.
modern times. So she'd be getting the best guy on paper.
Yeah.
So what do you think she would be settling for?
On paper, but I don't know if they are compatible, like how you said before. I mean, she obviously, there have been multiple men that she's dated throughout the years, and he's always been there, like, hey, pick me. I'm here. Like, please choose me. And
Yeah,
whenever she has breaks from people, she goes to him and they have a quick fling, and it was back and forth. So obviously, that's not her top choice. I don't
yeah.
know why he's not her top choice. You know, maybe she's turned off by the amount of women that he's with. It could be things like that too, but it's something about him where it just wasn't what she was looking for.
I think it's the same. I think it's the same thing as Will Smith. As he does she doesn't respect him as a man because
Mm,
he's always given the time and attention that hasn't been reciprocated, so she doesn't respect him as a man, I don't think.
mm.
Quintus West again, what contributes do you think high value women have that make men want to commit to them? um the first thing I would say is that she is sexually selective.
Mm.
Uh, that
Mhm.
for a man, that is very important. A man worth his salt, that's very important. That she doesn't just have sex with anyone. I'm not saying she
Mhm.
has to be a virgin. You know, I don't think most guys would choose a virgin nowadays. I think that's shifted, but that she's sexually selective. That she wants to be an asset to his life in helping build his business or in, even if it's bringing value in the home. I'm using traditional ways, but I'm saying what I think um, is seen as a high value wife. You know,
Yeah.
um, and yeah, that she is a woman who does care about looking after herself and being attractive, not just for herself but for her man too. Because um, I think I don't know whether we should change this or not, but I think the reality is that how attractive the woman it is that a man is with gains him respect amongst
Absolutely.
his peers
Absolutely.
massively,
Mm-hmm.
massively. And I think arguably the same thing goes for women, as in the more successful the man she is with gains her respect amongst her peers.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if I had to put it in a nutshell, that I'd say that what most men would find, a high value woman is that she is sexually selective, she is high in feminine kindness, qualities that would make her a good mother, and that she's an asset to his life. And the bigger
Yeah.
asset she can be, then um, the higher value she's going to be seen. We've got 10 minutes left. Is there something else you want to bring to the table? I've got 10 minutes left, and I have to
No,
bounce.
I think that that's it. But I guess circling back to the original topic, do you feel
Yeah.
like the consequences that Will Smith is getting right now, are they warranted? Did it fit the crime or is it excessive?
I, I think it's a bit excessive.
Mm-hmm.
I was a bit disheartened that he wouldn't essentially be returning to the film industry because of
Mm-hmm.
what happened. I think that's a bit excessive. I think an apology should have been made, obviously. I understand why his next few films maybe one or two may have been kind of pulled because of how he's acted recently, but to be that he's retiring from motion pictures, I think is excessive, and I think that's a bit too much. Um, I feel like they're making an example of him,
Mm-hmm.
but and like you said, especially because of what he's contributed to the industry his entire career,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a bit much. I think it's a bit much. What do you think?
I agree. I mean, I think that if he was banned from the Oscars, totally get that because that was a venue that you acted a fool in.
Fine.
Um, some sort of temporary repercussions, but just completely blacklisting him, or even just how people are saying that I've seen people call him a thug, that he's been lying about who he is for the past 20 years. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I think that if he was lying about who he was, we would have been saw signs of that. This is just something that happened that was out of character for him. And so I don't think that people are giving him grace at all. I hope that, it kind of dies down and people change their perspective, but it does seem to be excessive.
Yeah, I do think it's it's definitely a bit too much. It's one of those things where it's almost like a harsh reality of life that people love to see the hero fall, man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They love to see a king fall, even if
Hmm.
they loved them before. But yeah, I don't know if you've watched Game of Thrones. Have you
Yes.
watched it?
Yeah.
People's most favorite episode was when Cersei was doing the Walk of Shame.
Hmm.
They're like, "You're on your high might horse. Now you're down in the dumps with the rest of us. Good luck.
Yeah.
Welcome."
Yeah.
And no matter who it is, people love it for some reason. People love it, and I don't know why, but it is
Yeah.
what it is. It is what it
I
is.
think when we see someone who is highly regarded, it makes us feel, if we have insecurities within ourselves, it kind of makes us see ourselves like we're less than. So now it's like,
Yes,
ha, I knew you weren't perfect. You're just like me. So it's a sense of gratification when that happens.
100%, 100%. Uh, Tanisha, it has been great having you. I'm definitely we've got to do this again at some point. We're at one
Absolutely.
minute 53, 1 hour 53 right now. That just went by so
I
easy.
know.
Listen, I'm gonna put all your socials and your channel stuff in the description below, guys. Everyone who was tuned in, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. Tanisha, we'll talk again soon.
Yes. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, bye.